The violet prisoner. The plasma net crackled with violent energy as something thrashed within its luminescent web. Marcus Thorne dropped his scanner and sprinted toward the disturbance, boots crunching through the crystalline frost that coated everything on Nexus 7 after the twin suns set. He'd set the trap for scavenger beetles, the armored, dog-sized insects that stripped metal from crashed ships and occasionally provided enough protein to last a week. What he found instead made his breath catch in his throat. A girl hung suspended, 3 feet off the ground, her limbs tangled in the crackling energy mesh. But she wasn't human. Her skin gleamed like polished sapphire in the net's blue glow, and intricate silver patterns traced delicate lines across her face and arms like living tattoos. Long, pearl-white hair cascaded around her shoulders, some strands singed from the plasma discharge. She was conscious, her large violet eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him freeze mid-step. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones. "Please," she whispered, the word carrying layers of meaning that bypassed his ears and spoke directly to his mind. "Don't harvest me. Don't take my parts. I'll give you whatever you want. My ship's coordinates, salvage locations, anything. Just don't cut me open." Marcus blinked hard, shaking off the telepathic resonance. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, raising his hand slowly. This trap wasn't meant for people. Her crystalline features contorted with disbelief. "You're human. Your species dismantles others for research, for profit, for entertainment." The silver patterns on her skin flared brighter, pulsing with her rapid heartbeat. "I've seen the facilities. I know what you do to my kind." "What facilities?" Marcus stepped closer, his medic training overriding his shock. She was injured, burns along her arms where the net had discharged, and her breathing was too shallow. "Look, I need to get you down from there before the plasma cooks you. Can you hold still?" She flinched violently. "Don't touch me, please. I know you'll be gentle at first. They always are until they start cutting." Marcus felt his chest tighten. The raw terror in her voice spoke of experiences no one should survive. He moved to his equipment pack and pulled out a plasma disruptor, holding it where she could see it clearly. "This will shut down the net," he explained. "It won't hurt you, but you're going to fall. I need to catch you or you'll hit the rocks." Her violet eyes darted between his face and the device. "Why would you help me?" "Because you're hurt and scared, and I'm a medic." He paused. "Well, I was a medic. Now I'm just someone who doesn't like seeing people suffer." The girl studied him for a long moment, those alien eyes seeming to peer directly into his thoughts. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her, because she gave the smallest of nods. Marcus activated the disruptor. The plasma net dissolved with a sharp hiss and the girl plummeted toward the jagged rocks below. He lunged forward, catching her against his chest just before impact. She was surprisingly light, her bones seemingly hollow like a bird's, but her skin felt warm and strangely electric against his arms. She tensed the moment he touched her, every muscle going rigid. "You're going to sedate me now," she said flatly. "Then comes the restraints, then the cutting table." "There's no cutting table," Marcus said gently, setting her down on a patch of soft moss. "There's just a camp shelter and some terrible coffee, though I can't promise the coffee won't kill you. I don't know what Catherians can digest." Her eyes widened. "You know my species? Blue skin, silver neural channels, telepathic resonance patterns. You're from the Catherian colonies in the Veil. Nebula." Marcus shrugged at her surprised expression. "I used to patch up a lot of different species. You learn to recognize the signs." Otto chose that moment to arrive, the AI drone's spherical form bobbing through the air with its usual mechanical sarcasm intact. "Fascinating," the drone announced in its clipped synthetic voice. "Instead of catching dinner, you've caught a refugee. Shall I prepare the guest quarters or should I just calculate how long before we run out of food?" The Catherian girl scrambled backward, her silver patterns flaring bright enough to cast shadows. "Automated intelligence," she breathed. "They use those to monitor test subjects." "Otto's not monitoring anything except my terrible life choices," Marcus said dryly. "He's programmed to be unhelpful and judgmental. Aren't you, Otto?" "I prefer realistically pessimistic," the drone replied. Though I admit harboring fugitives does rank highly on my list of poor decisions you've made this year. How do you know she's a fugitive? Marcus asked, but he was already noticing details that supported Otto's assessment. The girl's clothes were standard-issue refugee garments, but there were burn marks around her wrists where restraints had once been. More concerning was the small surgical scar at the base of her skull, exactly where slavers installed neural control implants. I ran when the ship crashed, she said quietly, confirming his suspicions. The others, they didn't make it, or they chose not to run. Her voice carried notes of grief that made Marcus's chest ache in sympathy. I've been hiding in the wreckage for days, but the scavengers found me. I thought I was far enough from the crash site, but your trap was exactly where someone fleeing would stumble into it. Marcus finished. Bad luck, good timing, depending on how you look at it. He studied her pale features, noting the exhaustion and dehydration. When's the last time you ate something? She touched her throat uncertainly. Time is difficult. Since the crash. Maybe 3 days? 4? Marcus stood and extended his hand. Come on. Let's get some food in you before you pass out. She stared at his outstretched palm like it might transform into a weapon. Why are you helping me? Do I need a reason? Humans always have reasons, usually profit. Marcus let his hand fall to his side. Fair enough, I'm helping you because someone once helped me when I had nowhere else to go. And because you're about 2 hours away from organ failure if you don't get nutrients and hydration soon. The Catherian girl searched his face again with that unnerving intensity. Finally, she struggled to her feet without taking his hand. I'm Zara, she said formally. Marcus, and the pessimistic floating ball of unhelpfulness is Otto. I resent that characterization, Otto interjected. I'm also equipped with sarcasm protocols and environmental monitoring capabilities. Zara almost smiled at that, just a brief quirk of her lips before the wariness returned. She followed Marcus toward his camp, staying carefully out of arm's reach but no longer looking like she expected him to attack her at any moment. The shelter was a converted cargo pod, half buried in the hillside for insulation. Inside, Marcus had created a surprisingly comfortable space with salvaged furniture and jury-rigged electronics. A small hydroponics garden provided fresh vegetables, and the air recycler kept the atmosphere breathable despite Nexus 7's toxic storms. Zara stopped in the doorway, silver patterns dimming to almost nothing. This is your home? For now. Marcus moved to the food prep area, pulling ingredients from storage. I'll make something simple. Do Catherians have any dietary restrictions I should know about? Most human foods are compatible. She stepped inside cautiously, violet eyes cataloging every detail. Though we don't typically consume anything that was once sentient. Good thing I'm vegetarian these days. Marcus began assembling a meal, from dried proteins and hydroponic vegetables. Not by choice originally, but Nexus 7 doesn't exactly have a thriving livestock industry. Zara settled onto a cushion near the door, close enough to flee if necessary. You've been here long. 3 years. Marcus didn't elaborate, and something in his tone warned against pushing the subject. Otto drifted over to hover near Zara's shoulder. He's hiding from his past, the drone announced helpfully. Dishonorably discharged from the medical corps for refusing to follow orders. Now he fixes broken salvage equipment and talks to himself. It's quite pathetic, really. Otto, Marcus, warned. What? She shared her tragic backstory. I thought we were bonding. Zara looked between them with growing confusion. Your AI insults you? Constantly. It's his primary function now that life support maintenance is automated. I also provide witty commentary and existential dread, Otto added proudly. This time Zara did smile, a genuine expression that transformed her alien features completely. On Catherian ships, our AIs compose poetry and mediate disputes. I think I prefer your version. Marcus felt something warm unfold in his chest at her smile. It had been months since anyone had shared his space, Years since someone had looked at him without judgment or suspicion. He handed her a bowl of warm stew, careful not to let their fingers touch. She ate slowly, testing each spoonful before swallowing. The silver patterns in her skin gradually brightened as nutrients entered her system, creating a subtle aurora effect across her features. "Better?" Marcus asked. Zara nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders for the first time since he'd found her. "Thank you. I haven't felt safe enough to eat properly since the crash." "What happened to your ship?" Her expression darkened immediately. "We weren't supposed to be passengers. We were cargo." The bowl trembled in her hands. The transport was carrying Catherian refugees to a resettlement colony. At least that's what they told us. But the ship diverted course, and we realized we weren't heading for any colony. Marcus felt a familiar anger rising in his chest. The same fury that had gotten him discharged from military service. "Where were they taking you?" "A research station." I heard the crew talking. Zara's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "They said Catherian neural tissue was valuable for AI enhancement research, that our telepathic abilities could be harvested and replicated." The bowl in Marcus's hands cracked under the pressure of his grip. He'd seen enough illegal biotech operations during his military service to know exactly what she was describing. The process was almost always fatal for the subjects. "The ship crashed before they could deliver us," Zara continued. "Engine failure, I think. Most of the crew died on impact, the surviving passengers." She shuddered. Some were too injured to move. Others were so terrified they wouldn't leave the wreckage. They said it was safer to wait for rescue than to face whatever was out here. But you ran. I'd rather die free than live as laboratory equipment." Marcus set down his cracked bowl and looked at her. Really looked at her. This small, frightened girl had chosen to flee into a hostile wilderness, rather than submit to the horrors she'd witnessed. There was steel beneath her terror, a core of unbreakable will that he recognized from his own darkest moments. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "For as long as you need." Zara's violet eyes searched his face once more. And this time, what she found there seemed to satisfy something deeper than suspicion. Her silver patterns pulsed once, bright and warm, and for just a moment Marcus felt an echo of gratitude and tentative hope that wasn't entirely his own. Outside, the wind began to pick up as Nexus 7's nightly storm approached. But inside the shelter, for the first time in years, Marcus didn't feel alone with his ghosts. Otto's voice cut through the comfortable silence with typical mechanical timing. "I hate to interrupt this touching moment of interspecies bonding, but my sensors are detecting orbital scans from the outer system. Someone's looking for something." Marcus and Zara locked eyes, both understanding the implications immediately. The hunters had found their trail. Roots of trust. The orbital scans painted ghostly patterns across Otto's sensor display, each sweep growing more precise as the search narrowed. Marcus watched the data stream with the cold focus he'd learned in battlefield triage: assess, prioritize, act. "How long?" he asked. 12 hours until they can pinpoint surface anomalies," Otto replied. "Maybe 8 if they're using military-grade equipment." Zara had gone completely still, her silver neural patterns dimmed to almost nothing. When she spoke, her voice carried the flat tone of someone accepting death. "They've found me. I should leave before they trace me to your shelter." Like hell, Marcus moved to a storage locker and began pulling out equipment. Power cells, portable scanners, emergency rations. "We're not splitting up. You don't understand." Zara stood abruptly, her small hands clenched into fists. "These aren't just slavers or pirates. The organization that contracted the transport has resources, ships, weapons, political connections. They'll kill you for harboring me." Marcus paused in his packing, a memory surfacing unbidden. Another desperate voice. Another impossible situation. "Someone told me something similar once," he said quietly. "Right before I decided to do the right thing anyway." "And what happened to them?" "They lived. I didn't." He sealed a pack and shouldered it, then looked at her directly. I got court-martialed, discharged and exiled. But they lived, and I can sleep at night knowing that. Zara's violet eyes searched his face with that unsettling intensity. Tell me. Marcus hesitated, then moved to the shelter's small window, gazing out at the crystalline landscape. 3 years ago, I was chief medical officer on a military research station. Classified project, deep space, all the usual secrecy protocols. His voice carried old bitterness. They brought in test subjects, prisoners, refugees, people who wouldn't be missed. The experiments were brutal. Otto's systems hummed quietly in the background, the AI's usual sarcasm notably absent. What kind of experiments? Zara asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. Neural enhancement research. They were trying to replicate telepathic abilities in human subjects through surgical implantation of alien brain tissue. Marcus's hands clenched against the window frame. The mortality rate was 93%. The survivors were changed, broken. Zara's silver patterns flared briefly. Cytherian tissue? Among others. Your people weren't the only species they harvested from. Marcus turned back to face her. I was ordered to keep the subjects stable during procedures, to monitor their vital signs while the researchers carved into their minds. For months I followed orders, told myself I was helping, that the greater good justified the individual suffering. What changed? Marcus closed his eyes, remembering. A girl, maybe 16 years old, from a Centauri mining colony. She had weak psychometric abilities, could sense emotional imprints from objects. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make her valuable to the research team. His voice roughened. They brought her in terrified and begging, and I sedated her like I had dozens of others. But when she woke up on the surgical table and looked at me, she said, "Please don't let them cut out the part of me that dreams." Zara made a soft sound of pain. I couldn't do it anymore, Marcus continued. I refused to participate in the next procedure. When they threatened court-martial, I transmitted all the research data to galactic medical ethics boards and news networks. The whole project came crashing down within days. And the girl? She survived. The investigators found her in the recovery ward, traumatized but intact. Last I heard, she was living with foster family on New Geneva, going to school, dreaming normal dreams. Marcus managed a bitter smile. Worth every black mark on my record. Zara was quiet for a long moment, processing his story. When she spoke, her voice carried new understanding. You lost everything to save strangers. I lost a career built on complicity. Everything worth keeping I found after. What did you find here? Marcus gestured around the shelter. Peace. Purpose. The ability to help people without institutional oversight or moral compromise. He looked at her steadily. And today I found someone who needs help. Zara's silver patterns pulsed slowly like a heartbeat made visible. My people have a saying, trust is the root from which all other virtues grow. But trust requires vulnerability. And vulnerability. She touched the faint scar at the base of her skull. Vulnerability has been used against me too many times. What happened to you, Zara? Before the transport? Before the crash? She settled back onto the cushion, drawing her knees up to her chest. I wasn't born a refugee. My family had a good life on Cytheria Prime. My parents were both neural architects designing telepathic networks for city-scale communication systems. I was training to follow their path. Neural architecture sounds impressive. It was beautiful work. We could create shared consciousness experiences, link minds across vast distances, build empathic bridges between different species. Her voice carried wistful longing. The networks we built were living art, pulsing with collective thought and emotion. What changed? Zara's expression darkened. Corporate interests realized our neural networks could be weaponized. Mind control, forced memory extraction, consciousness imprisonment. They began recruiting Cytherian architects for military applications, offering incredible sums for our expertise. Otto drifted closer, his sensors focused on her with unusual intensity. And when recruitment failed, They turned to conscription, then to harvesting. Zara's silver patterns flared with suppressed anger. They couldn't replicate our abilities artificially, so they began abducting our people for biological research. Entire families disappeared overnight. Research facilities sprouted on remote worlds, hidden from galactic oversight. Marcus felt the familiar rage building in his chest. How did you escape? I didn't initially. I was captured during a raid on our university. They kept me sedated for weeks while they mapped my neural pathways, documented my telepathic range, tested my resistance to various control methods. She unconsciously rubbed the scar on her skull. They were preparing me for neural extraction when their facility was raided by Catherian resistance fighters. Your people organized a resistance? What was left of us? The raiders freed maybe 30 prisoners from that facility alone. But the rescue ships were overcrowded, understaffed. We scattered across a dozen different transports, hoping to reach refugee settlements before the corporations could track us down. But they found you anyway. Zara nodded miserably. The transport I was on claimed to be heading for New Harmony Colony. Instead, we were sold to a research consortium before we even left Catherian space. The crew had been bought and paid for months in advance. Marcus absorbed her story, recognizing the systematic cruelty he'd witnessed in his own military service. How many of your people are still out there, still being hunted? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. The resistance tries to track missing persons, but... She shrugged helplessly. Corporate research divisions have unlimited funding and legal immunity. We're classified as strategic biological resources, rather than sentient beings. Otto's voice cut through the heavy silence with renewed urgency. Touching backstory aside, we have more immediate concerns. The orbital scans have narrowed to this sector. I'm detecting 3 vessels in standard search formation, approximately 6 hours out. Marcus moved to his equipment locker and began pulling out items he'd hoped never to use again: military-grade weapons, tactical gear, emergency beacons. We need to move. There's a canyon system about 20 kilometers north, deep enough to mask thermal signatures. You want to run? Zara asked. I want us to survive long enough to make a real plan. Marcus handed her a thermal cloak and emergency pack. Unless you'd prefer to make our stand here? Zara stood, accepting the gear with steady hands. I've been running for months. I'm tired of being prey. Then we don't run far. Just far enough to choose our battlefield. Otto projected a tactical map of the surrounding terrain. The canyon system offers multiple defensive positions but limited escape routes. Are we planning to fight or hide? Marcus studied the topography, his military training taking over. Both. We hide until we know what we're facing. Then we make them regret finding us. Zara moved to stand beside him, her violet eyes focused on the map with surprising tactical awareness. You're willing to fight for me. Why? Because you're worth fighting for. Because what they're doing to your people is wrong, and because... Marcus met her gaze directly. Because I'm tired of being a bystander to atrocity. Something shifted in Zara's expression, a wall coming down, a decision being made. Her silver patterns flared bright enough to cast shadows, and suddenly Marcus felt an echo of her thoughts, warm and grateful, and tinged with something deeper. Trust is the root, she said quietly, from which all other virtues grow. She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was warm and electric, and through the contact he felt the full weight of her trust settling over him like armor. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus felt truly connected to another person. Otto, he said, without breaking eye contact with Zara, plot us a route to the canyon, and start monitoring all communication frequencies. I want to know exactly who's coming for us. Acknowledged. Though I feel compelled to point out that fighting mysterious corporate death squads rarely ends well for hermits and refugees. Marcus smiled grimly, his hand still clasped in Zara's. Then it's a good thing we're not just hermits and refugees anymore. What are we? Zara asked. We're people who've decided to stop running. Outside, the first of Nexus 7's twin suns began to set, painting the crystalline landscape in shades of amber and rose. In the distance, 3 dark shapes moved against the star field, growing larger with each passing moment. The hunt was coming to an end, one way or another.